You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited, in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, the end is near.
For over 100 years, the Watchtower organization has been pulling the wool over its members' eyes. The Jehovah's Witnesses believe they are in a spiritual paradise where everything is honest, true, and open. Schemes, scandals, scams, and cover-ups define the very organization they belong to. Many of Jehovah's Witnesses are now seeing what the Watchtower organization is hiding behind. We will be discussing many of the most notorious scandals and cover-ups in detail Saturday at 5:45 Eastern Time on the 6th.
Well, hello, Emery, and welcome in to Touch by the Tentacles of the program. The tentacles of the Watchtower. So how are you?
I'm very well. How are you today?
Well, doing good. People are looking forward to your program. I can't believe it. We've got already a number of people listening in on the radio line. We've got a number of people listening in the various platforms we're on. So they're looking forward to your program. So what do you have in the lineup tonight, Anne-Marie?
Well, the topic I really wanted to just focus on this evening is propaganda versus education. And a lot of times, just as a side thought, it's funny how propaganda is so often presented as education when it's really not. It's manipulations of one's vulnerabilities and a highly manipulative way of influencing people to think a certain way, believe a certain way, see a certain way, point where they actually believe that the propaganda that they downed with is actually educating them. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it is a little creepy. Now, I've got some clips here from Anthony Morris. When you want me to play some of those, I'll play them. Of course, Anthony Morris is a governing body member with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm going to have him, I have the clips here. So when you like to hear some of what he has to say about education, just give me a little heads up.
Well, you know what, Rick, I really appreciate that. When I first presented it to you, I had no idea that you would be able to so quickly find that clip that I mentioned to you about Anthony Morris and his crazy attitude toward the crazy comment, let's say, that he made to the rank and file regarding education. It blew me away. I literally rewind and rewind and rewind to make sure that sanity was actually what he said. And I appreciate your hanging on to that thought. So we want to get into this, or how are we doing?
Well, doing good. So you go ahead, you take it away. I'm here if you need me. Let me know when you want the clip played.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate you so much, my brother. So today, I do believe today is July 30th, 2022. And every single time I say the date, I am still blown away. How could we have been fooled so many years ago? And if we had known that 40, 50, 60 years away from when we were told, Armageddon's just around the corner, you don't have time to screw up, you don't have time to get an education, you don't have time to get a career, you don't have time to get married and have kids, stay on the narrow path, get into the ark of salvation before it's so too late. They in such a sense of urgency and such a sense of high alert. And I don't know about you, but, Mike and Kim say it so well. They call us, those who were raised in the 60s and 70s, the ones who were under the 1975 Watchtower Armageddon prophecy where, the world might survive till 75, but surely not any later than the autumn of 75. So, Mike refers to our generation as the screwed generation, and I think that is so well said. So today I wanted to talk specifically about propaganda versus education. And I wanted to get into propaganda first. I thought I understood propaganda, but it's actually it's a little bit more complicated than I thought. So Basically, in a nutshell, education teaches you how to think, while propaganda programs you and to believe what they want you to think. They teach you what to think. They teach you what to think, while education, again, teaches you how to think. That's a very, very huge difference. And if you just look at the way a normal child is raised, I'm talking about an infant, a toddler, a regular infant and toddler, how they're raised versus a child born in to the Watchtower to absolutely cult programs, cult parents. A little child born, cult parents will immediately begin to early program with propaganda, fed all of the propaganda and programming, indoctrination, practically from they will be molded to be what I call a properly trained, obedient, not Watchtower drone. But if you're born to normal, loving parents who are all about nurturing the child, delighting in watching this child in her own individuality, this little boy who discovers things and delights in his discoveries, and a child who just gets the support of his parents to grow in his own way, to develop in his own way into who he was born to be. These are two separate things. So propaganda, it can be a very nasty thing. So we need to first define propaganda. Propaganda is defined as information, especially of a biased view. Information that is just straight and clear and honest is real information to me. But with propaganda, basically it's a twisted form of information. It's information of a biased view or of a misleading nature, used by whoever's promoting the propaganda, used to promote a particular cause or point of view or agenda. Think of Watchtower while you're listening to this, okay, guys? Propaganda is used to promote a particular agenda. Now, common goals of propaganda include shaping one's opinions, basically hijacking your brain, making you think what they want you to think while convincing you that what they want you to think, you think those thoughts that they want you to think are actually your thoughts. You know, kind of like a totally dedicated, programmed, indoctrinated Watchtower, right? Made me think of that. Propaganda is used to promote a particular agenda. Common goals of the propaganda include shaping one's opinion, convincing them to support a particular cause. Do you not see this in the Watchtower cult? Propaganda often relies upon disinformation and misinformation, which is why, and which is very effective in shaping people's opinions and or to control their behavior. Disinformation and misinformation is very effective in shaping people's opinions and helps to control their behavior. This is all on research, people. Now, my opinion on what I just read. In other words, people are tricked and fooled and manipulated, clever twisting of truth and facts and outright lies, which are coming from the experts, from those that trust, because they're in a position to know. They're in a position of authority. And because of that, these people figures are those that people being fed the propaganda trust. When we went to the assemblies and the elders and the district overseers and circuit overseers, and maybe we had a special talk from a governing body, oh, maybe we had a Bethelite, didn't we pay special attention? We were all ears. Oh, this is so special. Aren't we honored to have them talking to us? Whatever they were feeding us, we were like, oh, yes. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Clap, clap, clap on cue, right? Scary. Often, propagandists, whether they are commercial political or religious, target and manipulate people's vulnerabilities. They target their needs. They target their weaknesses in such a way that eliminates their desire to check out the facts. People who are vulnerable, are looking for answers, they're looking outside themselves, and they are particularly vulnerable to the methods of propagandists. These who accept the propaganda, it basically takes a lot of the weight of responsibility. Just look to them. Tell me what to think. Tell me what to believe. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, yes. And again, it alleviates their desire to check out the facts in a way that makes ordinary, intelligent people feel comfortable. When people are listening to kind of propaganda that wants to just take over their mind and tell them what's true and what's right and what's wrong and tell them the way to think and what's true and what's not true, intelligent people to relax. They begin to feel comfortable because they're not having to rely on themselves and checking out facts or doing any research to make sure that these things are actually so. Like at Acts 17:11, where Paul was praising the Bereans, not just because they were believing what they were being taught, but he was praising them specifically for checking out the scriptures daily as to whether these things were so. That's Acts 17:11, New World Translation. It also helps the people to feel comfortable or at ease with the propagandists. Because the propagandist isn't just spreading his twisted lies and out twisted truth and out lies. He makes them feel so comfortable, so reasonable. So he gains their trust along with their comfort, gets them to relax like, oh, finally, I don't have to worry about trying to figure this out myself. It's already taught to me. Oh, aren't I the lucky one? There are some tools that the propagandists will use regarding any entity. They will use scare tactics according to the emotions. Now, expert authority or information, to me, coming from the governing body, if you will, in essence, allowing the propagandists to do their thinking for them. Does anybody remember a long time ago it was presented in one magazine? Basically, don't worry about trying to do all this research and going through all the magazines and the aid books, the Greek interlinear scriptures or the Attic Diaglott, or trying to dig into the Watchtower's history or trying to understand what the Bible really means. You'll just wear yourself out. Don't worry. There are those in Bethel whose job it is to do the research for you. We do the work for you. And then it's presented for you in your magazines and your publications. Just relax. We will do your thinking for you. I don't know if you remember that, but I remember being taught several times. So allowing the propagandists to do the thinking for them without realizing that they're actually doing it, feeling that they are being properly informed. I always felt like I was properly informed, believing in what they think and that what they know, which is given to them by propaganda, to the point where people will often promote and defend what the propaganda has manipulated them to believe, which, if we are to step back, and if we were able to really step back and look at the big picture with clear objectivity, it's a very scary thing to see. It scares me, and I've been out over 36 years. Here's an example. Hitler used propaganda. Now, this man basically was a master of propaganda. He took a country which was, by and large, made of people who were very kind, very obedient genetically. They thrive on following the rules. They thrive on doing the right thing, like order. Everybody was helping each other. Everybody was kind to each other. Families were respectful of each other. Neighbors always helped each other. But Hitler came and changed that all, and he did it with propaganda. Hitler used propaganda to control and manipulate the minds and opinions of thousands upon thousands relatively intelligent people. Propaganda, look at propaganda when it comes to war. Propaganda in war, well, promotion of hatred is definitely used, and bigotry toward the enemy. Just think how many times you've heard governing body members and others speak from the podium about the enemy, wicked apostates. They're pretty blatant, aren't they? So this promotion regarding war, whether it's spiritual war or so on, propaganda is the promotion of hatred and bigotry toward a proposed enemy, for those to see this enemy being evil as one to be avoided at all costs. Now here are some basic tools of propaganda. Here's this. See if you can't identify this Watchtower. Here are a few basic tools of propaganda. Name calling. Name calling of the enemy, derogatory terms of the enemy, or straight out lies regarding the enemy. Have any of us seen these? I'm sure we have. One other tool of propaganda is appealing to emotions, to influence people's opinions. Now, a lot of these who will have emotions, people who are basically vulnerable. Maybe they've had a death, maybe they've lost their job, their best friends have turned on them. They're vulnerable and they're emotional. And here come these smiling people who say, you know why all these things are happening to you? You're part of Satan's world. Come over to Jehovah's Ark of Salvation and Jehovah life, blah, blah, blah. Another tool of propaganda is called bandwagging. Like everybody get on the bandwagon, right? It's a technique, basically, that uses peer pressure to convince people to do something or to do some behavior in a certain way. Another tool of propaganda is using scare tactics. I'm sorry, I don't know about you, but I had nothing but scare tactics the whole time I was in Watchtower. Masked with fear, shame, and guilt. If you do this, it's not enough. If you do this, you're doing it wrong. If you do this, you're not going high enough. You're not going low enough. You're not going far enough. You're not going deep enough. You're not high enough. You're not going long enough. It's just never enough, and it's never right. And you're always constantly open to more and more and more criticism and direction. These scare tactics are used to scare people into believing and to supporting an agenda or a cause. Again, I refer to Watchtower. Now, another tool is manipulation of information. Manipulation of information comes by distorting and by misrepresenting the actual fact or truth of a matter. Lying in a way that sounds believable to a target audience. I will read this again. Manipulating information by distorting and misrepresenting the actual facts or the real truth of a matter. In basic, lying in a way that sounds believable to a target audience. This is Watchtower all the way, my brothers and sisters. One other tool of propaganda is sharing and promoting rumors. Most of the things that we hear about these wicked apostates, these human apostates, these evil, wicked haters of God, these evil apostates who spread lies from Satan. Have you ever heard one specific example that made sense, that backed up all their name calls? Ever? No. You start a rumor, you promote the rumor, and make sure it spreads. Because the more people hear a rumor, the more people believe it. Isn't that the... Didn't Hitler say, tell a lie often enough, and people will come to believe it to be true. That might not be verbatim, but Hitler said it because Hitler knew the value of propaganda. Hitler also said something that I've always found interesting. I'm on the Watchtower here. Hitler said how fortunate for rulers that men do not think. How many times have we heard from Watchtower in so many different ways, if not directly? Do not think for yourselves. Thinking for yourselves in regards to the spiritual. But basically what they're saying is, if you try to think for yourself in regards to anything that Watchtower is teaching you, other than Watchtower is teaching you, you are becoming an independent thinker. You are being disrespectful to Jehovah's channel, and you are being just like Satan, the first independent thinker, and we know he is the big enemy of God, and he will be destroyed. So the subliminal thought is solidly put in your brain to even question, to look for yourself, to look up the facts, to do the research, to listen to outside sources who might have the ability to shed light on a matter. That just lumps you as to all the other opponents. We're all going to die at Armageddon. That is cult speech, people. Cult speech. Now, in a nutshell, a person's thinking ability, which is something that God gave us, let's not forget. A person's thinking ability is involved in regard to how propaganda works. Now, propaganda basically hijacks and manipulates a person's ability to think. That scares me, especially when you're not even aware of it. Why would Toni Morris be against going to college? Education that so thoroughly teaches us to think. We need to learn to think. Why is the organization, since as far back as I can remember, so against young ones getting an education? I believe it was the 1969 May 22nd Awake that was all about the youth and the youth of those times. 1969, I was 14, wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to college. But this magazine was absolutely very emphatic that we should not even think of looking to get an education. In fact, it was so bad that in those days, even the parents who thought, okay, we have to follow the organization, even though they didn't want their kids to go to school, if their children said, no, Mom, I have a scholarship, and, you know, I love Jehovah, I'm not going to take my chances, I'm going to college. The parents said no. Those parents in those days were marked and were shunned within the congregation as having been not doing their job as spiritual parents. And the parents in the organization of those days, in 1969, 1970, who actually felt it was a good thing, a better chance to let their kids get an education, they were practically disfellowshipped. They couldn't be disfellowshipped, but they were shunned and treated as enemies of Jehovah, and their children were shunned. Well, this is a fact. I was there, I lived it, and I saw it, and it made me sick. So here we are, all these years later. So let's see. I want to check out, I want to know if Rick at this time happens to have a clip available of Toni Morris talking to the honest audience on jrjw.org, because I was watching this clip from jw.org, and he was talking about education. And when I saw coming out of Toni Morris' mouth something to the effect, warning and warning, don't go to university, oh, this, like it was the devil's den. And I'll never forget one sentence Toni said. He said, the better the university, the greater the danger. Think about what he is saying. The better the university, the greater the danger. Well, we know that university high college level teaches one to, they don't want to drone just sitting there and listening to the professor with wide eyes, taking notes and underlining their textbooks and then getting all the right answers on the test. That's not an education, that's memorization. That is not the same as an education, and you cannot have an education without thinking. In fact, most of the papers that students have to write involve thinking. You're required, and you are required to present a paper that shows you actually are thinking and reasoning. And in fact, you're expected to do research and include your research and include a bibliography at the back of your research showing where you got your information from. So there has to be clear evidence that you didn't just believe what you were told, but you proved it to yourself, and this is how you did it. So why would Anthony Morris say the better the university, the greater the danger? Well, in my mind, because we know university teaches you to think, while propaganda teaches you what to think, possible that the reason Tony Morris doesn't want to encourage anyone to go to education, to get an education at any university, because he says the greater the danger of what? The greater danger that they'll really be thinking, and the greater danger they're going to wake up, and the greater danger they're going to leave, and the greater danger the money will stop flowing in. Isn't that possible? Rick, do you by any chance have that clip with you?
Yeah, let's play it right now. So just hang in here with us. Let's play the Tony Morris clip, and let me just share it here so we can share it with our audience. So just give us a second here, and let's play the clip. It's about 5 minutes long, but we'll cut a little shot and play little parts of it. But let's see. This is Tony Morris, governing body member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Give it a second. It's coming right up. Just give it 1 second. It's just some wording before it comes on, but you're going to hear it. You'll hear what Anne-Marie's talking about.
Sometimes people will say, well, you know, Jehovah's Witnesses are against education. Well, that's ridiculous. We're not against education. We are pro-education. It's just that we are selective with who does the educating. We promote divine education. We believe it to be superior because it leads to everlasting life. So, with schools of higher education, and many of their curriculums, and if you know anything about it, maybe some of you have been, do they not have philosophy 1 and philosophy 2? It doesn't matter what you're going to major in. And they start you off there. You'd be going for another thing, but you have philosophy 1, you have philosophy 2. And then all of a sudden it gets in there, and the intellectual gripping of the mind, very hard to recover from. I've seen this so many times, and we could tell you so many horror stories, and the parents are all distraught. Well, you put him there. I remember one mother, I talked to her son, he went to Harvard when we were in New England. He became an evolutionist. Raised in the truth. Mom couldn't believe it, but I got him to tell me what he really thought. She was devastated. Well, you let him go there. And this real bright professor got a hold of him. Hard to believe. And sometimes some parents will drop their child off at a university, especially when they send them away from home, away from their established theocratic structure. And elders that serve there will tell you, and I've been in a lot of places where there's, they call college towns. Time and again, an elder serving in some cases, they drop their child off. A few months, they went to a few meetings, they're gone. Parents are all upset. Why didn't you do more for my son? Why didn't you do more for my daughter? I would say, who dropped them off? The elders are heartbroken, they try. Know a lot of them personally. So you have to decide that. You want to take the risk? Your call. We're warned.
Well, there you go, Henry. There's part of it. We can play a little bit more if you like. But you got the idea that Morris really really climbing all over education and saying it's not what you want to do,
Well, the main thing, I appreciate that, my brother, but the main thing is I wanted people to hear where he said, the better the university, greater danger. I think that is huge. Are you able to look through it while I
let's
just
see if we
continue
can't.
talking?
Let's see if we can't get to that part. It's only a few minutes here, but let's listen a little bit more. And I think he does bring it up here, so let's listen in.
As a parent, and you have a boy, that he should be able to, if he chooses to get married, take care of his wife. So the Jews actually had a saying, the Hebrews in Bible times, that if you did not teach your son a trade, you raised a thief. So they were big on making sure they learned different ways to make a living, provide for a family. And of course, generally they always had children. Well, we understand this. So the governing body understands you want your children to be equipped and prepared to leave the home and take care. However, another false refuge, and you parent and the individual child have to work out your own salvation with God, this higher education and this press for higher education. And when the motive is salary and the idea of having the means to get that dream house, see, you got a problem.
It'll continue in a second. They're just showing a picture of the governing body right now.
So, all we're saying is that what you choose to do, they need to learn something. They need to learn thinking ability, learn how to take care of their wife and their family. But what I don't appreciate hearing, and I heard this in different parts of the country, not saying I heard it here, you need a degree. I don't care what they said or this or that. You need a degree. Well, my answer to that would be what they really need is a good name with God. That's what they need. And we're not going to apologize, because there's no need to, for encouraging our young people in this organization to reach out for full-time service. That would be absurd and offensive to God. We're going to encourage that. We think that's a great life for our young people. Many of us did it.
Well, there you go. I mean, what do you think of that? Something else, isn't it? So he didn't quite say what you wanted to hear there, Emery, but he did say it in a longer talk. So just reintroduce what he said to the audience once again.
Yeah, I just hope you can find it. It's very scary. Tony said, the better the university, the greater the danger. And, I thought, well, Tony Morris be? I don't know if there's any way you could, while I'm talking, try to find it, because I think it's important to bring the point
Well,
home.
I have the clip.
On one hand,
I'm not going to be able to find it, so we're going to have to let it go with that. I played the clip, and that's all I have here right now. I'll kind of stump through it a little bit, but it's hard to turn. I can't turn the sound on and find it when you're talking. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just disappointed, because that was the one sentence I wanted everyone to hear Tony Merritt said. But please believe me, people, when I say, and I'm quoting Tony Morris verbatim, he said, the better the university, the greater the danger. So since we know that propaganda basically hijacks and manipulates our ability to think, why would Tony Morris be so against going to college when education teaches you to think? And then he says, well, we're not really against education. It's the kind of education. And what he does is just what all Watchtowerites do. They act like they're not trying to keep anything to you. But then he says, well, the real education that promotes real education, really, there's only one way to get a true education, which is by serving Jehovah's organization. It's like all roads lead to Rome, right?
Anne-Marie?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick thought. That was quite a sleight of hand by Anthony Morris when he said that you're going to college to get a degree so you can get that dream house, implying that if you're going to college, you're materialistic and you want to own a beautiful dream house somewhere. That's kind of a sleight of hand, and that's not true. Probably in the 50s, it was important to get a college degree, maybe the 60s and 70s, but the trades nowadays is where the real money is. There's thousands of PhDs out there driving cab. Thank you, Anne Marie. Love the program.
I love your program as well. If I mess up, it's because I completely lost my line. I'm hoping it'll stay on. But anyway, I just can't get over all of these poor parents, whether they agreed with their children going to college or they believe that their children had a better chance to go to college. And I'm talking, I think about 1969, because I remember watching beautiful people in the organization that I knew very well because I went to all of the meetings, all of the circuit conventions, and all of the assemblies, the district conventions since I was 6 years old. So by the time I was, 13, my whole life was Watchtower, and I knew thousands of people by face. And I saw in 1969, at the actual convention of 1969, where everybody was passing the May 22nd awake. And it was all about people and don't screw up and don't time in getting an education or a career. Don't think you have time to go to college. Don't think you have time to raise children. Join Jehovah before it's too late. And those parents, whether they supported their children going to school or did support their children going to school, they were marked. They were literally just short of disfellowship, but they were just as cruelly shunned and avoided and treated like the plague, like they had become enemies of Jehovah. And that just broke my heart because I saw with my own eyes. And know that Watchtower knew that Armageddon wasn't coming in 75, especially since Freddie Franz was the one who made up the whole thing. But the propaganda was so cleverly used on us that most of us believed it. And that's not counting the use of their mind control tactics, which I will not get in today. So again, I ask, why would Tony Morris, saying what he's the better the university, the greater the danger? That to me says the higher quality college or university, the ones that actually really get you to think, the ones that produce the high thinking scientists and sociologists and psychologists and scientists and every other level of education that is there to help humanity. He said, the greater the danger. Greater danger of what? Oh, the greater danger, obviously, if you're taught to thought and investigate and prove and research and do papers and showing proof of the paper that you're writing and providing the bibliography in the back of your reports and theses and essays. These are all facts that cannot be denied. The greater the danger is, because if you don't university and if you just stay a nice, dry, thinking, perfectly obedient, don't run ahead of the organization, don't think for yourself, just follow along to get along, serve, contribute, promote, be loyal, don't question. Well, those members, they have greater ability to hold on to and to control. But the danger, according to Tony Morris, seems to be, to me, that if these guys get away and get educated, it's like coming out of that cave. What cave was that, where everybody stayed in the cave and thought the whole world was dangerous? Yeah, and then they come out, and then they come back to the cave and say, it's not like we were taught. It's not this evil monsters, dangerous. Everything's great, but nobody wants to believe. It's easier to believe the propaganda. So again, I just further on, why Tony Morris be against going to college when education teaches you to think? What does Tony Morris mean by the greater the danger? Could it be that Jehovah's Witnesses are taught because Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm getting a lot of background noise, and it's really not easy to concentrate. Are we done? Could it be Jehovah's Witnesses are taught not to think for themselves, but to believe what they're told, while one who is taught how to think is in danger of waking up from their Watchtower programming? I think that's the danger that Anthony Morris was talking
This
to.
is Eli. This is Eli in Miami, just chiming in. I've been listening to you guys for like maybe a week now, and just want to chime in here. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I am under the line. Whenever I get a chance, I like to chime in, put my 2 cents in.
Welcome, Eli. How are you?
I'm doing much better, especially now for the last year or so. I've been on the forums, a couple of forums, gathering information from male and female like yourselves that were baptized or never took the dunk. I did, and you know, extremely supportive to others. Some not so much. Some of them, as you know, male and female, are very close-minded, and it seems like some of them are just beyond help.
Yeah, wow.
I was very fortunate to being brought up in a traditional Catholic household. My mother was a Jehovah's Witness, still is, 40 plus years in. I used to be the guy that bragged about Michael Jackson and Prince being Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, what happened there?
Yeah.
So this is my first time calling in. How many people are on here right now?
Go ahead, Eli. You're on there. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I got to grab this phone. Hello?
Well, yeah, I'm here. I'm from Brooklyn originally, raised in South Florida. I've been to Kingdom Halls in New York, Miami, Mexico, even Panama. I never took the dunk. That's what I call it. I had the selection that are in, most of them going on to the second marriages, most of them baptized. I don't know what's the case with you guys, but I heard about your show and on the forums, and I decided to chime in. There was a young lady talking. I didn't want to interrupt.
All right, Anne Marie, we'll be right back with us, folks. Hang in. She just misdialed the number here. You still on there with us, Eli?
I am, sir.
Yeah, well, it's
I'm
good to
still
hear
here.
you calling in from Miami, and Anne Marie will be right back on with us. Her phone disconnected, and she had to call back in. But yeah, we've been glad you came in the last few times, and always good to hear a new voice. So you're just kind of disconnecting from the witnesses, are you?
Well, I never took a dunk. I never
Yeah, well,
I
good
never
for
got
you.
baptized.
Good for you. Excellent. Boy, well, I'm glad for that, because once you get baptized, then the contract gets solidified.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Yeah. I take it you've read the book A Crisis of Conscience?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. It is like pulling teeth to try to get that book here in Miami. And we had very good library system here. I gave my mother an article in Sports Illustrated of when this kid who was a basketball player, I forgot what happened to him, she took to it. Because my mother was never disappointed in the fact that I never took a dunk. Disappointed in my career, you know, the military. She was, you know, very disappointed in that, but not due to the fact that I didn't attend Kingdom Hall or anything like that. So I don't know what's the story with you guys, but
Well, I really appreciate your calling in. And how did the call back?
What's the story with you, ma'am? What's your name again?
My name's Anne Marie.
Anne Marie, you're based out of where?
I'm sorry?
You're based out of where?
I'm in Northern California.
Northern California. Wow, that's a whole different time zone.
Okay, I'm trying to get back on track. I lost my phone and using my husband's phone, and now I'm trying to get back on my old phone. Hold on, please.
I got you. There used to be a girl who used to hold XJW meters. Go ahead.
Hey, Rick, can you hear me on this line? Rick?
We hear you, Anne Marie.
Okay, thank you so much. I made a crazy. Okay, I'm hoping I can just shove through this because now I'm thrown off. Is that okay? I know time's running short. I'll try to. Can I do that?
Are you having?
You could feel free to hit me up on my.
I'm just trying to finish my presentation.
Go ahead. You can feel free to hit me up on my social media too.
Thank you. We're again questioning Toni Morris's idea about the better the university, the greater the danger. I think thoroughly understood now that they basically are afraid of the rank and file getting educated. Just on the idea of propaganda, there is a wonderful show specifically done very well addressing this whole issue of propaganda and how insidiously it works to support the agenda of the propagandists by Kim and Mikey. Kim and Mikey did a great show on their YouTube, and the way you can identify is when you go through Kim and Mikey's shows. The particular show I'm speaking of shows a picture of a black and white drawing of the back of the head of a man looking down, and in the back of his head you see jail, and basically your mind is imprisoned. It is an incredibly well-researched and very insightful show that you will get a lot of benefit of. I'm hoping you'll look that up. Okay? So trying to move along. Yes? Does somebody want to talk?
You guys, how many guys are, how many people are on this chat given week?
Sir, be a question that Rick could ask. It varies. A lot of people come in at a time. A lot of times bring a lot of people in. May I finish now, please? Sir? Okay, so now I'm going to look at education because I'm kind of running short on time. We're going to now look at the aspect of education. So what is the danger of getting an education? Well, let's first look at the definition of education. Now, in the book...
And you can reach me via media.
Thank you. May I continue? Please. In her book, Education and Learning to Think, Lauren Resnick says that the challenges we all face today demand that we all learn to use complex reasoning and thinking skills in order to survive, in order to not have our mind taken over. That's very important. This woman, Lauren Resnick, said, and her book is called Education and Learning to Think. In her book, Lauren says that challenges we all face today demand that we all learn to use complex reasoning and thinking skills. And that point that Lauren Resnick makes in her Education and Learning to Think book goes along with Hebrews 5:14, which tells us all that we all should think, that we should all have our perceptive powers trained through you. You cannot refuse to think, to let other people do your thinking for you, just blindly believing what you're told to believe. If you are actually using your perceptive powers to think, which is how you use your perceptive powers to be trained. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us to make sure of all things. Now the Watchtower says, oh, don't worry about that. We've done your research for you. You know, don't run ahead asking questions. That's independent thinking. You don't want to be disrespectful to the faithful Greek slave. But yet 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us to make sure of all things. That doesn't say just make sure of a few things. That's all things. If you have a question, get it answered. That's your job. And 1 Corinthians 13:11 brings that out well. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, Paul mentions when I was a baby, when I was a child, I had traits of a child. Well, what are the traits of a child? The traits of a child is you lovingly look to your leaders, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your uncles, to tell you what the world is, to tell you what is right, to tell you what is wrong, to tell you how to think, to tell you what you should believe. But then further along in 1 Corinthians 13, in verse 11 specifically, Paul says, but now that I am a man, now that I am adult, he says, I have put away the traits of the babe. In other words, I'm not going to just believe something I'm told to believe. I'm not just going to think because I'm told to think. So it's very important that we think for ourselves. In other words, take responsibility for ourselves and what we think and what we believe and the choices we make in our lives. And that goes along, like I said, with the scriptures in the Bible. Now, what are thinking skills? Thinking skills are the cognitive processes that we should use to solve problems. We solve problems, we can make different decisions. It helps us to be able to ask different questions, helps us to make plans, to be able to organize and to create information. And we're not relying on other people telling us what to think. We're not relying on other persons liking what we decide or liking what we think or agreeing with what we thinking. Real thinking involves one brain. Thinking involves the ability to think critically, not just taking in knowledge, not just, sitting there like zombies, under the answers. It involves taking in knowledge and to accept and believe. That's nice, but to go further and to check out as to whether these things are so. But there are also steps to critical thinking. There are steps to having real thinking skills. Here's one: asking questions. You see how the organization doesn't like any of the rank and file asking any real serious questions?
I think I agree. I think Mr. Rick would agree that that's easier said than done.
Another point is being able to make a decision based upon answers to the questions that we may have had, and to make a decision based upon doing the research we have been done. Also, in having thinking skills, we must be ready to consider all points of view and opinion. Another thought in having good thinking skills, we must be able to connect to make sense of all information taking in from our thinking about different ways, putting it all together, tossing out what does not sound true or not fit facts. Because when you're ready to really investigate everything, to think, to have questions, to get answers to those questions, you're going to have a whole different mind rather than just sitting there blindly letting some authority figure tell you what to believe, what the truth is, and so on. We can see in the Watchtower, our minds were taken over. That Watchtower cleverly used our vulnerabilities. They used our trust. They used our sincere ability or desire to serve God. They used our sincere desire to do what's right. They used all of our vulnerabilities in order to deceive us and manipulate our mind by convincing us on what to think, while getting an education accentuates our ability to think and to ask questions and research. So it's all two different things. Watchtower propaganda, they don't want you to think, they want you to think what they want you to think. Education is a whole opposite thing. We need to be able to ask questions, to be able to do research, to consider all views, and to make our own choices. No wonder the Watchtower and Toni Morris call it dangerous to get an education. It's dangerous to them. They have a lot to lose if Jehovah's Witnesses start learning to think. We were all touched the tentacles of the Watchtower in this way. We were all programmed to think that if we began to think for ourselves, then we were somehow disrespecting God or being like Satan. We all sometimes still struggle learning to think. It's part of our recovery from the Watchtower to be able to learn how to think. We have this difference between propaganda and education. We have discussed how Watchtower cleverly used propaganda, and we have all certainly been affected by it. And we didn't actually get to hear the clip where Anthony Morris said on jw.org.
Okay. It's been nice talking to you guys. I'm going to tap out. Rick, I could hit you up on via social media, Facebook, correct? Hopefully.
Perhaps Rick might not be at the controls right now. He does. I have other things he has to do. I do want to open the lines now. We have a little time. If anybody has any comments, we have about roughly 6, maybe 10, 12, 14 minutes for free time. Anyone who wants to comment, has a question, please feel free. Lines are open. All you have to do is hit *6 to unmute yourself, and then please remember to hit *6 again to mute yourself. Brother, if you have further things you need to say, feel free to go ahead.
Anne-Marie? Yeah, okay, just a quick thought. You mentioned Adolf Hitler. He had a minister of propaganda, I believe his name was Goebbels, and he was instrumental in changing people's minds, the German people, so that they didn't have a problem sending 6 million Jews to the gas chamber. So propaganda can really be very persuasive. So you have to be careful to do your due diligence and do your research. Great program, Anne-Marie. Great program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else like to comment? I said what I needed to say.
Oh, Emily?
Hi.
Hi, dear. How are you today, hon?
Hey, Constance, how are you?
I'm good, honey. I'm good. Good. You know, I always look forward to the show, and the research you do, honey, is totally, totally amazing. You know, for people that don't know me, I'm all about education. I taught at the community college level and at a private business college. And yeah, I went through all of this with Watchtower, and so did so many of us, you know, growing up in the 70s and 80s and so forth. I was going to say, Anne-Marie, you know, we both grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it just really very frustrating to hear these things, you know, even from Toni Morris and any of the governing body members, because I'd like to see the average JU, or let's just put it this way, I'd like to see the average governing body member live in the San Francisco Bay Area with all the expensive, you know, rents and high cost of living down there, even mortgages, and see how well that they can support themselves or their wives, because we know that Toni Morris was the only one that was a father, is a father of 2 sons. The rest never had a family. And I'd like to see how well they can pay, you know, $4,000-5,000 a month for maybe a 2-bedroom apartment, say down in Silicon Valley, okay? Being a janitor say if someone is a maid cleaning people's homes, and especially with the high cost of gasoline and everything else down there, there's no way, Anne Marie, there's no way that they'd be going to the food banks and everything else trying to support themselves. But because they're very privileged and they have received all these donations over all these decades from all the JWs, they're in an elitist position. I mean, it really makes my blood boil, Anne Marie. And your research, honey, is excelente. I'm not kidding you, girlfriend. You did an excellent job on that. And it was brought to my attention last night. I didn't get to see it, but I will check it out in the next few days. JT and Lady from Washington, D.C. Did a video. I don't know, honey, if that's connected with part of your research or not. Maybe it's not. But anyway, they did a video. It just popped up last night on my phone, and it was talking about education. And they had mentioned about the hypocrisy of it. So anyway, I just wanted to share all that with you, Emery. I mean, education, the thing about education that's so beautiful is it empowers people. It helps people to develop their self-confidence and their self-esteem. And, not everybody that goes to college becomes an evolutionist or an atheist, okay? I mean, I had professor friends that were Christians. So that's the thing. They want you to be able to use critical thinking skills in college when you're getting all your GE units. And Watchtower is really threatened by that, okay? They're very, very, very threatened by that. So it comes down to having everybody be a bunch of robots, and that way they can control and manipulate you. But then, you know what, honey? The bottom line is Watchtower is not going to be paying your bills and your mortgages, and they're not going to be paying your bills. Okay, so that's something that people really, really need to think about very seriously. So thank you, Anne-Marie. Great topic, and I thank you so much for your research.
Oh, thank you so much, Constance. Yeah, bottom line to me is how they managed to demonize education while promoting their form of quote-unquote education, which was really all propaganda. And I spent a long time, really talking about how propaganda works. It basically manipulates your vulnerabilities and your thinking ability. It takes you over. And, if they were really loving shepherds of the flock, they wouldn't have left hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people like me, like you, like Rick. Rick and Kim and Mikey and everybody else who followed Watchtower's basic directions, which was get out of school, be a pioneering, reach for higher things. And now we are all living in the streets, living with, terrible problems that we have no medical insurance for, no medical way to pay for our old folks' phone, because we weren't, they lied to us, lies, and all the time. They got all the benefit. They have no repercussions to pay. They never even say they're sorry. Never once have they ever said we're sorry to us, the screwed generation. Anyway, I want to remind everyone, please, if you go on the list of all of Mike and Kim's stories, there's over 800 of them, near the end, keep looking and looking. There is one that shows a black and white drawing of a bald-headed man shown from the back, leaning his head slightly forward, and in the back of his cartoon black and white head, you see bars, like somebody is imprisoned in his brain, and it's all about propaganda. And Kim did an excellent piece on how insidious propaganda works. I realized I didn't want to touch it. I only want to offer, please, I encourage every one of you, listen to Mike and Kim spit on propaganda, showing a black and white picture of a bald man in the back, leaning slightly forward with bars in the back of his head. You can see someone is entrapped in the prison of their mind. It is so well done, you'll never think the same. Anybody else have any thoughts, Anyone else have a question? Star one. Well, anybody there?
Hit
Yeah,
star,
Marie, it's
star 6.
star 6. Yeah. Yeah, Emery?
Right here.
Okay, I just didn't want to go on again unless somebody else wasn't speaking. A quick experience that I had when I was going to college in 1976. I was going to a business college, and I knew that it wasn't a good thing to be going to college, and so I used to always take my books and put them in a brown paper bag and wrap them up. And so this one time I didn't do that, and I'm going down the stairs to my car, and the elder comes up as my book study conductor. He says, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to school." He goes, "What kind of school?" I says, "It's a business college." His mouth is hanging open like I told him I was going to go watch porn or something, or I was going to a strip or something. And he goes, "Why would you do that?" Well, I'm thinking to myself, 75 didn't bring Armageddon. This is 7. And my dad was telling me, get a degree, and, you can't go anywhere without an education. Then my brother Boogie said, why would you go? I said, well, it pays the rent, because I was going on the GI Bill. I went tri-semester, and 2 nights a week, like from 6 to 10. And in 2 years, you get an associate's degree. So I was going to school, and he said, Brother Boogie, and he told me the other brother's name. He's looking for someone to help him with his carpet shampooing business. You'd be much better off doing that. And I said, he actually approached me, and he was going to pay me $100 a week, to work off the hours that we didn't have book studies or theocratic ministry school. And I said, well, he's only paying $100 a week, which was a lot back in the 70s, I guess. But I can get $450 just sit in the classroom. He says, you're better off doing the carpet shampooing. Left me. He was annoyed with me. So that's you're right. That's the way the Jehovah's Witnesses view education. They don't want you to have one. Thank you. Anybody else? Star 6.
Are you there,
It's
Emily?
like really good. Yeah, I'm right here. It's like the Watchtower, even if you get an education and you somehow manage to go to every meeting and do your study and get out in the service while you can, people still make remarks. They still make derogatory remarks. You never, you just never can get it right. And I remember this one really young sister, only 20 years old. She had 2 children to support. Both her kids are her father's. Both her children's father walked out on her. Her parents didn't want anything to do with her. She was tired of apologizing for doing what she could, and she decided to do some kind of a accelerated program that would get her into a job that would help her make money. The woman needed to make money, so she was in Thursday's meeting. She got everything else, but not Thursday. And these 2 people from the Watchtower show up at her door after the meeting, just chastising her. Like, well, Armageddon is coming. Well, you're not putting Jehovah first and blah, blah, blah. And she stood up to them and she said, I realize that Jehovah knows my circumstances more than you do. The Bible says he who does not work will neither let him eat. Who's going to support my children? Who's going to pay my rent? Things are only going to get more expensive. I can't go expecting somebody else to carry my burdens. I have a way to blah, 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 blah. And they kept saying, but Jehovah, but Jehovah, but Jehovah. And she stuck to her guns. I was so proud of her.
Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hello.
Hi, honey.
Yeah.
One last thing I wanted to tell you. There's an XJW. Can you hear me? Okay, hon?
I can hear you. Absolutely.
Okay, honey. There's an XJW I know, and we found each other online. She's a wonderful sister. And she was born and raised a JW. Her mom was a Nazi, a Nazi JW, as they say. And just her first name, I'll just say her first name, that's all. It's a true story. I'll be brief, though, because I know your time. Anyway, she was a regular pioneer. Her mom thought education was not important. So she had her drop out of high school. And she married a ministerial servant. She thought she was doing everything right, according to the organization. The ministerial servant was a piece of work and very abusive to her. And she started going back. She only had a GED education. But anyway, what ended up happening is, as she got she started going back to college, her ministerial servant husband was very threatened by that and literally tried to kill her because he was very threatened by it. Anyway, long story short, this is the beauty of the whole story. She was so bright. She is so bright. She literally became an MD. She became an ER doctor and an internist. 2 specialties. That's how bright this ex-JW woman is. And she went through medical school and she graduated. And when she graduated, her mother, who was a Nazi JW, and her sister, who were diehard JW, never even went to her graduation. Okay? 12 years of university studying and 2 specialties in medicine, and they did not even honor her with her graduation. So that's how indoctrinated and brainwashed Watchtower is. And yet, she's doing very well, and she loves people. She tremendously loves people to do the work she's doing. But of course, in the eyes of Watchtower, it's such a no-no to get an education, except when the governing body members say they need doctors or they need attorneys for themselves. This is where the hypocrisy comes in, that, it's okay for Watchtower for the regular person to go get an education. Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Oh, thank you, Constance. Isn't it the truth? They demonize you one way or another, but while they're demonizing you, if they see any benefit that they can get from you, oh, please, come serve us. How horrible. She went through all that, and her own mother and sister wouldn't even come to her graduation. That's disgusting. Anybody else want to come in? We have a lot to talk about today. Okay, I guess that's it. Well, thanks everyone for listening. I think we're done, Greg. Nobody else is here.
All right. Let it go with that. Well, thank you, Anne-Marie. And thank you for coming on and giving the program. And I want to thank those that have called in as well. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, Anne-Marie. We'll see you tomorrow, actually, on your Sunday program at 2:00. So looking forward to that. Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie. Going to end this broadcast now on YouTube. I'm going to end this broadcast on YouTube. So, but stay with us. JW World News will be back up on YouTube in about 5 minutes. Just going to do a little finagling here to shut this program down and stop the other. So stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Ending the broadcast here. All right.